All right. So welcome everyone. It's good to be here with you. Seems like I just saw all of you, and here we are back again. So let's have a little bit of fun. I tell you, I knew it was going to be longer this morning, and as most of you may know, if you've read the book, the Moses Scroll, it is a very in-depth subject. So, I mean, it's not like we can just knock it out. I mean, it covers quite a bit, and we covered quite a bit of ground today on this particular class. So hopefully it generated not only some interest, but it generated some questions about what I covered not only here, but also in the book. I think quite a few of you are somewhat familiar with the whole story. And I know that there were other content creators who also, I let them know I was going to be doing this, and they invited more people. So we have some people who may not have been part of what we've done in previous weeks. Maybe this is your first time. So all of that to say, thanks everyone for joining us. And now is the time that we're going to have some fun. So I want to start with I got a question, a super chat. Thanks, Jason Bueno, for the super chat. And Jason asked, why would anyone want the scroll to be fake? To keep the Bible the way it is? No animal sacrifice is a problem for Christianity? And I think it might not be acceptable to just say yes, yes, and yes, but that seems to be, in some ways, one of the main drivers. Like, in other words, particularly by the 19th century, scholarship had already pretty much designed what, even though it's challenged in some circles, the basic understanding of how we came to possess the Bible that we came to possess. Well, if this is sort of outside of that neat and tidy little developmental progress bar, it does present some problems. Now, one of the things that I've heard from people primarily who haven't really researched the subject from the Shapira scroll from the 19th century is one of the things people say, it's during this time that German scholarship was beginning to develop, really fine-tune the understanding of the documentary hypothesis. So whenever they look at this case without looking deeply or looking under the hood, so to speak, they say, well, this is what he's doing. He just happens to know a little bit about that, and he creates a text which fits the scholarship of his day. But the problem with that theory is it does not fit the scholarship of the day, and it really doesn't even fit the scholarship of today. What it is interesting to note is that it more and more, and this is according to the very solid research of Edon Dershowitz, is that most often when a forgery is discovered, what you see is that it becomes less likely to be authentic the more advanced scholarship becomes. In other words, we learn more as time goes on, and if you look back at the forgery, that gap grows, right? Does that make sense? Whereas in this case, the more that we've learned from the 19th century, the greater it looks authentic. Again, not only the Dead Sea Scroll examples that I have, but there are other examples too. So, Jason, the answer, it's a great question you pose here. And so the question is, why would they want it to be fake? It's multifaceted. Number one, Shapira had some stuff in his past where he allegedly participated in, or at least was somehow connected with, forgeries. And I cover that in the book as well. So one of the biggest reasons that they wouldn't even give it a fair shake, the scroll, apart from never seeing, it was unprecedented, the find was unprecedented. One of the other reasons is because Shapira in the 1870s had shortly on the heels of the discovery of the Moabite stone, through his shop had passed what we call Moabitica, a series of statues, and some of these were grotesque, and various idols and objects that were supposedly discovered in Transjordan. So Claremont Ganneau happens to be one of the guys at that time who cracked the case and accused all of these, or labeled all of these as forgery. And so what the Germans, because the Germans decided that they wanted to buy these, they had bought 1,700 of these things for various reasons, which I describe in the opening chapters of the Moses Scroll. They had bought like 1,700 of these, and so the Germans, they certainly didn't trust Shapira. So there was a lack of trust and a belief that there was some fakery already in the works, that kind of thing. So that was part of the problem. Again, the Bible, the way it is another part of the problem. They had already figured all this out. And then the fact that if this was true, it certainly not only challenges Christianity, but in some ways it challenges Judaism's views as well. So hopefully that sort of gives you a little bit of an answer. Jason, again, thank you for your question. I hope that was a satisfactory answer. Todd and Angel, hello, my friends.
Shabbat shalom, brother.
Hold on one second. Hold on, let me make sure I'm hooked up right. I don't hear you. No, we don't hear you. I got you, man. Thank you, Seth.
Like the old commercial. Can you hear me now?
We're good. So if you were telling us all kind of cool stuff and I missed all that, start over.
No, I don't think I did.
Anyway,
I just want to start off on a light note. Kudos to you for mentioning the Testament of Moses.
Hey, you like that?
You're the first person I know of that's actually read it.
Well, I tell you, a lot of people who are into the scrolls probably have at least found value in that opening section, because it does talk about how do you, according to the text, how would you propose that we preserve these manuscripts? Well, Joshua, you put them in cedar oil and so forth. So anyway, yeah, I love that text. I think it's a really good text for bringing out at least that idea of preservation of scrolls, right?
Yeah, and for those that can't find it online on a PDF, it's also called The Assumption of Moses.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Have you ever read The Apocalypse of Moses?
I don't recall. I don't recall reading it, and that doesn't mean that I didn't, but it means that if I did, I probably wouldn't be able to talk intelligently on the subject.
Yeah, it's been a while since I read it too. We have it. I just haven't read it in a while.
Yep.
But I just want to bring that point to you about the Testament. I thought that was really cool because when you said that, I was kind of like, what?
Yeah. Hey, rewind it, huh?
Well, I went running back here and said, I know I got a copy of that somewhere.
Yeah. No, it is a fascinating text, and I think I wasn't aware of the Assumption of Moses, the Testament of Moses, and its mention of that particular preservation of scrolls until I saw it in, I think it was a paper by Joan Taylor. And I remember writing it down and saying, okay, I need to check this out. And that particularly stood out. And I always thought, hey, if you're going to do a scroll class, you got to put that part in there. So
Yeah, I don't even remember where I heard of it. I can't remember. It's been so long.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
We got so much stuff that we downloaded on PDF. It's hard to remember.
Oh yeah.
Where we heard it. But that's pretty much all I got for right now, except for the comment about your picture on Facebook when I mentioned the other day. If I was standing beside you with a boonie on, you and me would look like brothers.
Hey, I tell you what, I need to let it grow back out. That was quite a beard I had going there back in the day.
I saw that pic and I was like, well, look at him.
That's right. That's right. Good
That's all
deal.
I got now, buddy.
All right, well, hang tight. You might think of something else, or maybe Angel will come up with something to puzzle us.
There you go.
All right. JJ Sillery, how are you, brother?
Hey, how we doing?
Man, I'm doing great.
How we doing? Oh, good. And Shabbat Shalom to you and everyone. Hey, I don't have any groundbreaking stuff, but the things that I wanted to say, I guess, other than, a great class again today, was that, it's the things like this, and you clearly mentioned it in the talk, was that, this, it's like shaking the foundation of our religion. And, I don't necessarily think that religion and faith are the same thing, but when you start shaking down the fence there, that's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings and have them challenging, a lot of things there. And, it's something simple like this, like, hey, we have this, we found this, scroll, and it,
right.
And it appears to be authentic, and it conflicts with, the words, the words that we have in our Bible,
right.
And I know there's a lot of things in the Bible, because there's, like the Christian Bible, it seems like it takes some of those things out of the Septuagint, and maybe a Jewish translations don't quite go there. I'm not up on every single translation, but
right.
Some take some of those words, some don't.
Mm-hmm.
And like I mentioned last night, one of the I don't remember the specific example, but when Jono had his talk at the conference, he mentioned, there's one verse in there where, because it was written scriptio continua, that, it translates something that doesn't make sense. But when you look at the words, the letters, and then all of a sudden it makes sense.
Right.
It's the little things like that. So, I just think that, I just think it's great, and it's challenging. And I'm happy to challenge. I haven't had, faith, for very many years. I've been studying, but when I got in and I started digging around, and, I'm not, I was never at a point where I'm so fenced in, that I wasn't afraid to challenge anything. And I think it's great. I think it's great. And, this is all truths.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I also appreciate, because we've had several discussions, and you've brought up, and this is what I really appreciate about you and many others in this forum, is you'll say, well, I don't know that I buy that. Because that's the whole point of the exercise, is to bring up various challenging things, but at the same time to be respectful and to engage in good dialogue back and forth. Look, I don't have a bone to pick. I've read a lot of stuff, just like many of you have. I often will come across somebody that says, have you read this? Do you not understand that this is what scholars think now? They're kind of in your face. That's not me. I promise you, when those questions come by, I usually roll my eyes and think, yeah, I've read it, and I just don't behave as badly as you. But I mean, some people want to fight. My point is not to fight. My point is to lay out evidence and to have a good open dialogue. That's where we gain. I think that's where we all win, and people learn that way. That's the way I think about it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I knew, like, even before I'd come to faith, that I was like, it can't be that hard. It can't be that. I mean, it seems like people are making harder than what it needs to be. And just kind of dialing back and looking at what we have here, and Yeah, I'm just kind of reaffirming,
Yeah.
the some of the earlier thoughts that I had now that those thoughts are becoming beliefs. So
Yeah.
it's great. So yeah, thank you. And yeah, and you keep every time, every talk, you give me one more book to read, and it's just like the list. I can't whittle that darn thing down, but
Yeah.
I appreciate the resources. So thank you.
Hey, I appreciate that people around me are nerds like I am, and they like to read these cool books. So no offense when I say you're a nerd. I don't mean in a bad way. That's a good way.
None
That's a
taken.
term of endearment, is what I mean it
Yeah.
by. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
All right.
right.
Well, I appreciate it, JJ. Hang around. You might have
I,
something else come up.
yeah, I may have something.
All right. And my friend Clody, Shabbat Shalom. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing wonderfully.
So
What are
I'm
your
not a nerd.
thoughts? Huh?
I am not a nerd.
You're not a nerd. No, I just
I
meant
would
JJ.
love to be. I would love to be one. I would really love to be a nerd, but I don't have time.
I think you're a nerd in like 3 different languages if you want to know the truth. So don't say you're not.
I was
All right.
a nerd. I'm not anymore.
Okay.
Okay. So I think that this was a very groundbreaking, you say in English, class, because I think that this was a call for people to awake and awaken other people.
Yeah.
And I thank you for that. I want to do only a little, a very small essay. I pray to God that my English is right. So,
All right.
first of all, I believe that Moses Scroll was authentic. And if Shapira was a forger, he was a genius and a magi.
I agree.
So let's get it over with.
Yep.
Now, on the other hand, I had a moment with my sister and my niece in Albania. She had a problem with her teeth or tooth, and she went to the dentist, and the dentist did something to her. She's like 19 years old, so she doesn't need her mother with her.
Yeah.
And when she came home, she had more pain than before going to the dentist.
Yeah.
And my sister was very mad at the dentist. And my sister was shouting at my niece that was in pain. This was a very funny situation.
Yeah.
And my niece said to her, "You know, Mom, when you are in pain, you go to the doctor. How am I supposed to know what he is supposed to know?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this is really, really deep.
Yeah.
Because why am I bringing this example here? Let's go 2000 years ago, and let's go to the time of Jesus.
Okay.
I know that priests or Pharisees or whoever was in power had power in or opinions, or were experts in legal, in theological, and in diagnostical or healing areas.
Yeah.
So I know that Jesus, when he was preaching the kingdom of heaven, was not talking and trying to make simple people, uneducated people, feel bad for themselves, but he was blaming it on these Pharisees.
The teachers. Yeah.
The teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly, the teachers. And he called these people children of Satan.
Yeah.
Now let's come fast forward. I have been a part of the administrative of my government in a culture area, theater area, for 3 years. And I know that all the administration needed reports. And we did the reports of whatever research or job we have done for the last week or month or semester or trimester or year.
Yeah.
They always needed this kind of mirroring, of report of what you have done with your money.
Mm-hmm.
So what did we do? At times we were authentic and we took this seriously and we did the job seriously and we described the job as we should have.
Mm-hmm.
And at times we were like, okay, nobody reads these.
Right.
So why should I be the stupid one that does this thing with this much honesty? Let's go and let's ask AI. By the way, AI is a monster nowadays.
Yeah, that's right.
So why don't we ask AI or ChatGPT do our work for us? And it was as simple as that, and we had all the next week free. And I believe that our system nowadays of education and of administration and of government has this disease. Nobody is passionate, or a few people are passionate for what they are doing.
Yeah.
Most people do that for money and do that for power and do that for professional Arabism. We call it.
Yeah.
So I think that this is this big disease. I am a patient. I am not a doctor. So I'm talking from the point of a patient. However, I am a patient like my sister, not a patient like my niece. I've been a patient for quite a long. So I think I know a little bit that the society of the knowledgeable, the community of the academics, and the people that are real nerds,
Yeah.
and that get paid for these should really do their job.
I agree. I would shout amen at that. I tend to agree. I think that people, and I'm not trying to be arrogant here, but I think a scholar or a researcher or a teacher, if they don't dig deeply on a subject, I'm of the opinion that they should just shut up. I know that's harsh to say it that way, but don't weigh in if you haven't done the work, right? And we see this like with Shapira, the whole case of Shapira. People are very, very lazy, and a lot of times I'll read comments or I'll read even articles written in scholarly journals about the Shapira affair, the text or whatever, and it's so shallow. Like, to date, I mean, clearly the Edan's book, The Valediction of Moses, contains a couple of sections in there that are very academic, and I have yet to see a scholar really weigh in and debate those points. Is that fair? You know what I mean? So
I understand exactly that. You know what? It happens a lot in nowadays society. When they don't want to work and to dig in, they ignore.
yeah,
So it's time now that I think this is very crucial, that all of us push from down to these scholars so that they really dig in and do their work a little bit more responsibly.
I agree. I agree. And I like the way you put it, and I like your examples. You know, one of the things that I'm hoping, like I said, I'm not really picking a fight, but I do want to present a challenge, and I want scholars Like, I don't call myself a scholar. I'm a Bible student. I'm a researcher. I'm a teacher. And people have told me, you're a scholar, whatever. No, I have challenged the academic world to take a look at this. And here's kind of what and I want you to maybe comment on this if you want. But Claudia, it says in the book, right before on page 158, I said, may this work serve as a call for a long overdue and well-deserved reassessment of what very well might be the greatest manuscript discovery of modern times. As Moses Shapira told Strack, the question will be for scholars to decide. Especially important in this regard is the advice of George Ebers to Edward Meyer. He told his protege, quote, it is no art to declare suspicious things wrong or false, but it takes courage and certain knowledge to publicly declare that what is tainted with the smell of the fake is still genuine. Good luck. And see, this is the view that I'd like to take. Like, I'm very open to say, Claudia, and all of you, I want you to know, we are working very hard to trace down the manuscript strips. We know at least the last known location of various collections of these. If we find these, we're going to have them scientifically tested. And if it turns out that they're fake, we're going to be the first to say. In other words, if they do the carbon-14 and they say, hey, Ross, sorry to let you know, we tested your little scroll and it turns out that the goat skin is from 1876. Okay, game up. Then I'm going to write a book about the greatest forgery ever. This guy was like a prophet to predict all this stuff. But I don't think we're going to find that. I think that the evidence is overwhelming that we're dealing with an ancient and authentic scroll. And then then we just have to decide, what does that mean for our faith?
Now, on the other hand, I believe that being this courageous as to really get in the opposite direction of the establishment is not such an easy thing.
Yeah.
So I can understand even that. However, I think that it's time now for scholars not to be fundamentalists and not to be, we call it servile. I don't know if that's a word in English or not.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I think that is a difficult task, but that should be the norm. The fact that it is difficult and the fact that in millennials, people of the establishment were serviles and were risking all that they have by doing an authentic job, that doesn't make it normal and acceptable.
Yeah.
And let's call things by their name. If something is black, if something is white, even if it has been a routine or if it's been the rule for thousands of years.
Yeah. Well, I asked the other day, Seth and I were we spent a lot of time together, and I brought something up about scholars and how they were hesitant to even give this a fair case. And, he said something that kind of, it really made sense to me. He said, but what do they have to gain? Yeah. You see, people often act or react or move on something that benefits them. There's no benefit at this point to claiming that it's authentic if there's no way to prove it. So that's why, and I exercise caution sometimes when I talk about the scroll too, but I'm saying what a lot of people will say is, I think it's probably a fake. Well, why do you think that? I just think you see, it's safer, SAFER, to fall out on the side of, I call it a forgery, because if then later it's proved to be real, you could say, well, I was real hesitant at first, but sure enough, the evidence supports that. So I think that's the case too, is a lot of people are hesitant to weigh in because at the best case scenario, it hurts their position in the academic world. In fact, Idan Dershowitz has said, not only in writing, in his book, in articles, but he said this on interviews, that senior scholars told him when he was considering doing this work, hey, you know what, Idan, I wouldn't even touch that. Just go do other things, right? But here's one quote. I want to read this, Clody, from the back cover of my book, actually. It says, "The sin of believing in a false document is not much greater than disbelieving the truth. The tendency of showing great scholarship by detecting a forgery is rather great in our age." And that's from a letter from Moses Shapira, August 28, 83, to Edward Bond, Augustus Bond, when he arrived in the Netherlands. So the bottom line is, people don't benefit from siding with authenticity. I have scholars. I got 2 letters this week, emails from scholars in universities. One is in Israel, and here's what they said. In secret, like they messaged me privately, "Hey, Ross, thanks for your work. I believe in the authenticity of the scroll." But they're not saying that publicly,
Mhm.
you see? So in some ways, I don't want to be too hard on people, but I guess I come from a position that I'm not fearful of what people say about me, maybe to my own detriment. I go where the evidence leads me, I think, is the main thing. And that kind of goes to what you're saying too, Clody. I mean, it's time to say, get off the fence.
Yeah, but but it's again the problem of the system, of the education and of the careers.
Yeah.
Because you left yourself on purpose out of this, so
Yeah.
that you have the freedom. Even if you get inside now the academic world, you will come from a different background. You don't come from an Ivy League school that has to pay the dues.
Right.
And that's a big difference. You are freer than them, than most of scholars, at least as I can see them. Perhaps it's some kind of I don't know, the judgment. Perhaps it's a judgmental mindset from my part, but that's what I see. But I think that the education, I'm sorry, the education system has to reinvent itself and put people where their passions are. Because people will have other motives than power and money and fame for doing their job.
Yeah.
If you have only these 3, what is my benefit in this? Then you properly are very corruptible. But if it's your soul and your passion talking to you, you are going to be passionate for that until your very last breath. Amen.
Amen. You know, and that's the thing. There are a lot of ways to make friends and influence people and make money in religion. And the things that we do aren't really any of those things. Like when you go live on a Saturday morning, you say, "Hey, look, here's what you think you believe. Now let me show you what the text actually says," or "this is late," or whatever. "This is corrupted." I mean, look, that's not a way to make friends and influence people. And it certainly isn't a way to get support. But if you, like you said, if you don't care about that, if you just have a passion for the truth and sorting through these things, that's what really matters. And I think that's what I love about this group is that I have all of my friends, and I don't have very many. I see Daniel Wright's on. He's one of my friends. I don't have many, but this group I would consider my friends. Almost all of you I know personally, and every one of you that I do know have placed the pursuit of truth higher than anything else, and that's what I love. That's who I like to hang out with.
Amen.
What else, my friend? You want to? You got more? Or you want?
I'm giving the stage to Belinda.
Okay, I'm going to bring Belinda up in just a minute, but Belinda's a good friend of mine. She's been all over the world with me, she and Glenn, and her kids, so I can make her wait. Just 1 second. Let me catch a couple of these comments. I'm trying to watch YouTube as well, so I appreciate that. And I do see that I've got quite a bit going on here, and let me just look at a couple of them. Beyond Doubt Theology is my friend Wassam. I've done a live with him. I owe you, Wassam, another discussion.
I'm a fan. Can I say that I'm a fan?
Okay, yes, you can say that. I am too. Wassam does a great job at his YouTube channel, Beyond Doubt Theology, and he wants to do a talk with me on his channel about the book of Jeremiah. So it's not that I'm a rude person, Wassam. I hope you know that. I've just been floored with so many projects, but I do hope to do that in the near future. But he says people are talking about the Shroud of Turin when they should be talking about this. And I agree. I think that the material witness and the evidence behind this scroll is there's so much of it that we really this ought to be more mainstream. David Price says, on the Ebers quote, it's not just a matter of simple change of opinion of one expert like Claremont Ganneau and the crowd that then followed him, but it's now an international academic establishment. And so in a way, what happens is we see this. Once the scholarship, once the academy determines a certain decision, then it takes a lot to overturn that. And what they'll do is they'll say, you have to have great evidence to overturn this. Otherwise they just pick on this person and chase them out of the academy. Like I'm looking right now, just briefly, I'll tell you, I'm studying what's called the Jehoash inscription. And this was a big, big deal. It was considered to be the forgery trial of the century. Like 7 years, the owner of the James ossuary and the Jehoash inscription was dragged through the mud, and the consensus was that both of these were forgeries. Well, I'm presently reading all of the material from the trial, studying the scholars and the experts, the epigraphers, all the top scholars, and I'm beginning to think that was an authentic inscription. Well, but if you say that, the establishment is what you're really going against. And so, anyway, it's the same thing with this. People's minds are made up, and what I find is that most scholars are woefully uninformed. They'll read a little bitty article about it, and they'll look at something that was written prior to the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that's all they know. Anyway, there's a lot to this case, and I think what I like to say about my own work is that I am an independent researcher, meaning I don't answer to anybody except maybe Seth and my wife and God above. And other than that, I don't need a bunch of people between me and the Almighty. How about that? Okay, my friend Belinda, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you again for a great class. I just want to, number one, you had mentioned that Shapira's store was listed in a catalog or
Yep.
something like, okay, I remember that. So he was very well known, very well respected in, and he was not considered a scholar, correct?
He would be like me. He didn't have credentials like a degree from an Ivy League school or anything, but he had
That's what I mean.
but he had
Yes.
a lot of like time in the trenches, and his we call it erudition in the field was very well established. So he worked on inscriptions and so forth, but he didn't have a degree, didn't have, as we say, excuse me, all my vegan friends, but there was no lambskin on the wall.
Right.
There was no degree, right? He
Right.
just, yeah.
So that was where I was leading to. I can compare him to you, or I can compare you to him, whichever way you want to look at
Maybe
it.
so. That would be an honor, hopefully, to me at least. Maybe not to him, but hopefully to me at least. I would think so.
Right. And I remember, so in my mind, the same scholars who, the same kind of scholars who were reluctant to respect him at their level, that's going on with you today, correct?
Say that again. That people were hesitant to accept. Is that what you said? Basically,
They were those scholars back then were hesitant to accept him as their equal.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not considered. I'm not in the club by any stretch. I really am
correct.
not. I've been honored to do a couple of things which really make me happy, like give a lecture at the Albright or whatever. But when it comes down to it, people wouldn't consider me. I don't think, the scholar that they are.
Right, right. And that's all well and good. They take their path. But what I'm really saddened about is that their path is supposed to be the path of seeking truth, you would think.
Yeah.
This is what people look to them for, is everyone is looking to these scholars to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
And yet they're reluctant to actually seek that truth, present that truth, or at least, instead of the scholar saying, well, this is the way it is because I say it's the way it is because I am who I am. I have all these degrees and I've done
Sure.
all this research. Whereas you, and I believe probably Moses Shapira, are more apt to seek, find, share, and let everyone come to their own conclusion once all of the evidence is presented.
Yeah.
And these scholars, this is what they're supposed to be doing, but they only do it within their own circle. And then they pressure one another to get on board to this belief or that belief, or agree with this or agree with that. And if we're not going to all, we can't agree with the lowly non-scholar. Oh my goodness. If even one of us agree with the lowly non-scholar, what does that say about us?
Yeah.
And it's just very, I guess Clody mentioned they need the academic world needs to revamp themselves. They need, they're lacking honesty. They're lacking forthrightness, and they're lacking courage. They are quite cowardice in a lot of their things, like the ones who won't even look at it. Why? What are you afraid of?
I think Seth.
Is there a snake in there?
Well, I think Seth says that right. I think they would say, "Well, there's no real benefit to me." Now, let me say one more thing, because I'm with you, Belinda. I mean, I agree with most of what you're saying, but I will say this: a lot of my good friends are credentialed scholars who do have degrees from these big schools, and they're professors and so forth. And so I want to hesitate. I want to make sure that I'm not putting everyone in the same boat.
Right.
I know you mean that.
They are exceptions. Those people, like James Tabor, he's an exception to the rule.
Yeah.
James Tabor, he's he's out there trying to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think he's on board with you, be honest to Moses, and so there are the few of the scholars who are doing things more honestly and more courageously. But again, they don't want to put their name out there. They say it in private, but they don't want it to be out there. Well, why?
Yeah.
Your life is only this long compared to your eternity. Now, of course, some of these scholars, I'm sure, they don't care about eternity because they don't believe in God or whatever. But those who even have a little bit of thought toward God, that, maybe God exists, however they think, you would think that they would look beyond their short life here and look into the whole eternity thing here and say, you know what, even if I'm going to be bashed for standing up for this, I'm going to stand up for it, because I think what is being presented here is a significant amount of evidence that definitely is showing more that the Shapira scrolls were legit and got bashed. And then later, even the Dead Sea Scrolls, which they have considered, I'm assuming the majority have considered legit, there were still people bashing them. Is that correct, what I heard you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that God brings up people like you and brings up people like Moses Shapira, who sadly lost his life suspiciously over this. It was convenient for the certain people that Moses Shapira should happen to die when he did, just as he was planning on going and sharing this information with their competitors.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good word. I love the word evidence. And so let me say this. I have some of my friends who have a negative assessment of the scroll. In other words, they would say, if and they've spent time looking at it, and they have come to a conclusion based on their assessment of the evidence that this was a forgery, a good forgery, but nonetheless a forgery. Okay, and one of them that I'm a friends with, he is a professor in Europe at a Catholic school, very, very good school, and he is a wonderful guy. He's given lectures, he's done papers on the fact that he thinks it's fake, but we're friends. And so our relationship is a little bit different. And he totally embraces me and shares my work. Like, he says, look, I think this is fake, but you really ought to read Ross's book. You ought to read this, read the evidence. And so one day I was talking to him and I said, hey, you know what? I said, and some of you know who I'm talking about, but I won't name him. But I said, I tell you what, when I find this scroll, because we're looking, when I find either the fragments that went to a professor in Germany or the fragments that were last seen in England, I'm going to call you and we're going to be there together when the tests are done, because I want you in the room so I can laugh in your face. And he jokingly but seriously said, I want to be there. And he said, let me tell you this. He said, I want nothing more than these fragments to be determined real. And he said, if the evidence, now by evidence, he means we've got to find, it's like a murder case with a missing body. You've got to find the scroll and test it. And if you find it and you test it and the DNA, the science says that this is, points back to, I don't know, whatever year you say, an ancient time, then he said, I will write a retraction, and he said, I'll buy you dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but we're good friends over the whole case. But
so that's he's a rarity, though. I mean, he's a rarity. I think back at the one guy that you mentioned in the story that was telling them, you think we should just, this goes against our Bible. This goes against our Bible.
Oh, yeah.
So, so there you go. There you go. What Seth was saying, what is their benefit? Well, what is the opposite? What if these things are found? What if they are proven legit?
Yeah.
Now, what does that do to our Bible and our theology?
Yeah.
That alone is a reason why people are rejecting it, because they don't want to have to admit that, oh my gosh, if this is real, then there's something wrong up here. What
Yeah.
happened here?
Yeah. Well, it certainly makes us go back to the drawing board, doesn't it? I mean, I think that's one of the things that that's very concerning. I see a comment from Angelo Michael. Apologetics will go against your work. And what we see is the apologists, the fundamentalists, they're not concerned with determining whether this could be an actual scroll that goes back to an earlier form of what Moses actually wrote, because they believe the book as they have it is the book that Moses wrote. See? So
Correct.
what are you doing if you're digging into this? You're challenging the very nature of my beliefs. And some people don't want to do that. And I get that. I really get that. I mean, I get it because I meet people like that, not because I have that concern myself. I've always put the pursuit
But
of the truth.
it doesn't make any sense to not want to get down to exactly what the truth is, because it's that which goes on for eternity. It's not everything else. It's not our theology. It's not this church, this religion, that religion that is going on through eternity. It's what going on, what God told man, what God told this man, Moses, to tell everybody else is what matters. It's not, and so I just doesn't make any sense that people would want to balk at that when it, like I said, this short life here doesn't matter. It's what's beyond. And if this is if the Moses scroll, if that information is going to get us more down to the accuracy of truth, of God's absolute truth for eternity, that should be what matters.
Well, the preponderance of evidence, as we say, in our common understanding of jurisprudence, we say the preponderance of evidence, to me, leans heavily towards authenticity. And then that opens up a whole other level of debate. So what does that mean? Okay, it's ancient, it's authentic. Then people get into a debate and they say, well, we believe that this is an earlier version than we have in Deuteronomy. And some say, no, it's an abbreviated version of Deuteronomy. I hear a lot of people say that. Ross has convinced me that it's real, but I believe that it's just a vest pocket version of Deuteronomy. Some great scholars have said that. But they have yet, many people who hold this view, or the few that hold it, I should say, have yet to face head on the evidence, primarily the evidence that Edon Dershowitz puts forward in his book. So he and I have different views about what the scroll is. I think it is a copy, or a copy of a copy of a copy, if you will, of a work that was actually written, could technically, theoretically, be something which is closer to what Moses actually wrote. That's why I call it the Moses Scroll. Edon, from his academic worldview, he doesn't say that, but he does say this. He said the preponderance of evidence says that this scroll, the Moses, he calls it the Valediction of Moses, is an earlier version of Deuteronomy than our current book of Deuteronomy in the Bible. And he goes to prove that in 2 chapters, basically. Well, most scholars just dismiss, and I really mean most scholars that are talking about this just dismiss it, and they never weigh into it. And my only argument is I'm fine if they don't believe it, but I don't weigh into a discussion, what we say in the South, half-cocked. Like I don't just like go, well, I don't know anything about that, but I'm going to state my opinion publicly. Well, just don't.
Right.
You don't. Anyway, I'm with you. I think it's time that those who are in the field can make a stand on this and use the evidence. I think that's the main point I would argue. Just use the evidence.
And then and if people would at least consider that and start looking at it that way, then there would be more people seeking these actual fragments to be able to test them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I tell
you know,
you,
but maybe they don't want to get to that point. Maybe they fear even seeking them, or maybe they do know where they're at and they're hiding them. Who knows?
well, I tell you, as soon as I got to the place where the book was published and then Don's came out, I sent a note to what I would consider the Shapira experts, people who were looking at it, people who thought it was real, people I knew who didn't think it was real, but active in the search. And I said, hey, let's work together. I don't look, I want to find these strips because that's the only way to really, beyond a doubt, to really get this one way or the other, right? Get it sorted out. And so now that is the reason that we've got a team of people working on this. And I know for me, I've not withheld anything. And I think that it's the same for others in this group. They've also shared with our group where they're looking and what they found. And we've got things that we're not talking about right now. So, but I promise you at the right time, they'll come forward. And I also wanted to say, I saw other people say this, and I want to say I appreciate this and agree. Several have said, hey, wait a minute, James Tabor's always, in your court and, saying nice things about, and that's true. And he's not the only one, but like yesterday, I really wanted to draw a crowd for this class because I felt like it would be a good one for people to hear if they didn't know anything about it or they kind of knew about it. And I sent a note to several content creators and said, would you send this to your people? Consider doing that because I really want to. And James, to my knowledge, James was the first one to jump on it and send it to 10,000 people, So we did have a large group. So there are people who have treated me more than fair in this world. And again, like I was blessed to have an opportunity. I wrote the article Shapira Fragments for the upcoming Brill's Encyclopedia of the Dead Sea Scrolls. That should be published pretty soon. I've lectured at the Albright. I mean, look, I've had some really nice things happen to me, despite the fact that I don't, have a degree in whatever, epigraphy or whatever. So, so the field, I want to say that the field is more interested in the preponderance of the evidence and where is that leading, even though at times I think, I get a little bit upset and I think, well, they're not even considering this fairly, but some are. So let's hope that enough evidence gets out there that people can say, you know what, I'm going to dig into this deeper.
Yeah, I hope so. But thank God you are out there and keeping this known because it's a significant piece of our history. Clearly, it's just as significant as the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, if people consider the Dead Sea Scrolls a significant piece of our world history, how can they not? How can they not see something that was even found even before the Dead Sea Scrolls as significant?
Well, Sean Fitzgerald, he just posted a comment in the YouTube chat, said the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls pushes Occam's razor much further towards authenticity. And that's true. It's one way to look at it. What we've got is, again, one of the reasons I focused on the Dead Sea Scrolls, because we can take this to the next question later. But the first question that we have to say, is it authentic? And what is the best evidence that it may be authentic? Well, the best evidence is the simplest explanation. they didn't know all these things until the
Mhm.
discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It looks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's probably a
Correct.
duck. And
Correct.
so then you say, okay, it's a Dead Sea Scroll. Well, what does that mean? Is it a rewritten Torah? We have examples of that. So anyway, so there's some work that still has to be done, but we're making progress,
Mhm.
and we move forward from there. So Sean says, Tabor sent me and recommended your book, which was fantastic. I'll be following you as well. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate my friend James for doing that, and I appreciate you joining us today. I hope you're back every week. What else we got there, Belinda? You ready to let go of the mic and come back when you think of something else?
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm done. Thank you so much.
Hey, I appreciate you. My best to your family.
Thank you.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Doug Martin, what's happening, brother?
Not too much. How about you?
Man, I just think that this is it's a great day. I'm happy to be here.
It was a very, very cool lecture. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So this is really off the wall, but I thought it's worth asking about. At any rate, have you had any conversations with Friedman about the scroll?
I have been copied on an email from Friedman to another scholar, because here's what happened. I love Richard Elliott Friedman's work and have the greatest respect for Richard Elliott Friedman. Whenever I wrote the book, I had corresponded with him a couple of times, and he was kind enough to respond to me. And basically just, hey, I appreciate your work, and, whatever. So when the book came out, I wrote him and said, would you be interested in reading the book? I'm happy to send you a copy. He wrote me back, sent me his address. I sent him a copy of the book. Later, because I didn't hear back, and I didn't want to write and say, hey, man, did you read that book?
Yeah,
What's going on?
yeah.
Where you at? What are you doing? You can't be busy. I just didn't say anything, and I just kind of hoped and prayed that he would contact me and say, man, I'm in. I'm a believer. That didn't happen. So another scholar friend who knows Richard wrote him a letter and said, hey, what'd you think have you studied Ross's work or Edon's work? And his assessment was, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was something to this effect. These guys, well-intentioned as they are, and as good as the arguments that they might have, they don't really understand the documentary hypothesis. In other words, it doesn't match, which I wouldn't argue that it does, but it doesn't match the documentary hypothesis, and therefore it can't be what we think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so he has looked at the transliteration, I guess, and concluded that he doesn't see D there, he doesn't see DTR1 there, he doesn't see DTR2 there.
Yeah.
It's just a non-starter for him for that reason.
Yeah, and again, I think part of that is, and I know you study this quite a bit, but if you look at the DTR, or even the first tier, the first strata of D, as we call it, is going to be the law code. So that's one of the problems, is that this is totally missing. So it certainly isn't an earlier. This is that view. And then the other thing is that within this document deviates from D, DTR, DTR1, DTR2. It disagrees in some ways with the documentary hypothesis for other reasons. Like, for instance, the Moabite women and this text that appears in the Moses scroll, or the valediction of Moses, that in the Pentateuch is a priestly text from the book of Numbers. This blows the mind of someone. Like, oh, no, that's a mixture. You can't have that because we've already determined that that's this. So I'm not doing it justice in the explanation, but that's basically the view is that it doesn't match the standard academic view for those who accept the documentary hypothesis.
Okay. The other fella who it occurs to me would be valuable to have a look at the scroll text is Ron Hindle at California.
Yeah.
He's retired. He's retired now. So
he's written on
have
it.
some time.
He's written on it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, let me tell you, he did write on it. He not only did he write on it, but he represented Tabor and Edon wrote a case for the authenticity in Biblical Archaeology Review. All right, and then Ron Hindle and Matthew Rochelle, or Rochelli, the Catholic scholar, they wrote the rebuttal. They wrote the reasons for forgery. And so that's an article in Bar. If you can't find it or you don't find it, hit me up and I'll send it to you. And so what we have is academia is really a place where a lot of this back and forth took place in the early, particularly after Edon's work. People the academic world didn't initially notice my work at all. They primarily just got the radar activated when Edon's book hit the New York Times front page. But eventually, a lot of these scholars did, and they did read it, and they did engage with it. And the biggest argument against my book from the academics who did have opinions against it was they would say things like, Ross is trying to bridge between a academic view and a religious view. Like Professor Clawins, that was one of his arguments against me. Here I am talking about the Moses scroll like there really was a Moses, and coming across like I'm some kind of quasi-academic. So that's the biggest criticism for me, and I take it with pride. So
that is funny.
Not with stupid pride, but pride. Yeah, that's right. It's a badge. It's a badge. So there are scholars like Richard Elliott Friedman and Ron Hindle, who I have the utmost respect for, and this guy Matthew Rochelli, he's great, and I know that some of these guys have the opinion that the scroll is not authentic. But here's the other thing: there was this fun back and forth where Rochelli responded to another scholar by the name of what was his name? I'll think of it in a minute. He wrote an article. I think it's Bass. He's an Israeli scholar, and he wrote a paper that one letter that he saw on a drawing from the 19th century proved that the scroll was authentic. And he said the reason he said that was because what he saw on this drawing, drawn by someone who witnessed the scroll on display, he saw a yod in Paleo-Hebrew in a certain form with a flourish that was not known until decades later, even after the Dead Sea Scrolls. So he said, there's no way. We did not know this letter. So he says, could one letter make all the difference? And Rochelli wrote back and said, no. The name of his paper was No. So they did. They got in the trenches on this thing, and it went back and forth. But it was some really good things. And what I wanted to do, I went back and I have tried to keep up, and with friends like, really digging into this. Matthew Hamilton, for sure, in Australia. If I miss something, I'm sure that he's going to find it, and I've tried to keep up. What are the strongest arguments against it? And what are the best arguments for the authenticity? And that's where I try to stay. By the way, Seth has this idea that he pitched at me. He said, it'd be really good, and I think your friends and friends that work with you and that study with you and that follow what you do, they would appreciate it. What are the best arguments against it, and bring them on your channel and interview them?
Yeah, that would be great.
I think it would too. And so, because I'm presenting a case that I've become convinced that this is the preponderance of evidence suggests this is authentic. But I tell you, I could get Matthieu Richeli or Ron Hindle if they would and say, can you prepare? Let me know when you're ready. Take all the time you need. And let's schedule a discussion where you bring forward your biggest arguments against the authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that would be outstanding.
I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be good. And I think it'd be fair. And that's what I really, really set forward to do, is to be fair and so forth.
And, it may have a better chance of getting off the ground, these kinds of debates, give and takes.
Yeah.
With both Friedman and Hindle, because they're both retired now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So they got some time on their hands.
Yeah. Well, I think that, but after James Tabor retired, he got so busy that, I can't even hardly get him on the phone or whatever.
But he did that to himself.
That's true. That's true. That's true. That is true. Yeah, that's some good stuff. Well, I tell you, Doug, in fact, one of the things that I might do in our, I guess the best place to do it would be the Patreon, and all of the, like in our HOREB on Discord, is to start posting in that Shapira, in that Yachad group, a lot of these articles that I've read, both for and against, because there's some really fun reading out there.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
That's all I got.
All right, man. Hey, always good to hear from you. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate you. All right. What else we got? Let's see who else we got. No one is raising their hand. There you go. I guess people. Oh, wait a minute. There's Clody. She's back. All right, Clody, what you thinking?
Yeah, I'm always here.
Good.
I just wanted to ask you, can you describe us what would happen to the world if this Shapira scroll was declared authentic?
Well, I tell you, the first thing I think it would do is it would bring up the level of question that I mentioned a minute ago. So it's one thing if you go, let me just play for a minute. Let's pretend, Clody. Let's say that a group of us travel to England, and we get lucky, and God guides us. Let's say the latter. God guides us, not we're lucky. God guides us to the place where we find the scroll, and we get it tested, and they come back and they say, hey, this text it dates to the 7th century BCE, or the 6th or the 5th or the 4th or whatever, but it's ancient. And by the way, what Edan puts forward is earlier than what I did. I mean, he says it dates to the Iron Age for the reasons that he describes in his book. So anyway, let's say it's ancient. The first thing that would happen is people would then have to put into the mix, they would have to put in this question of, what is it? How does this fit in the chain of the development of the text? So let me explain that a little bit better. Like if you said, okay, it's ancient, and we've got these other versions of Deuteronomy. We have some variations in the text from manuscripts found at Qumran. We've got the Masoretic text. We have the Septuagint in Greek. We have the Samaritan Pentateuch. And then you would have to find, where does this one go, right? Where does this one fit into that family tree of Deuteronomy? Now, I'm of the opinion, and more capable person in this field would be Don Dershowitz. He too puts this above, earlier in the chain of the family. It's before the Masoretic text. It's before the Septuagint. It's before the Samaritan Pentateuch and so forth. Now, if that's the case, we then have to make a decision. So I'm going to give you an example. In Deuteronomy 20, there are instructions on how you are to handle a combat situation, right? So in Deuteronomy 20, what you say is you got an enemy, a potential war, a battle. You offer peace, and if they accept it, then you can make them your slaves or take their women or whatever you do, but you don't go kill them. So that is a rule in Deuteronomy 20. Deuteronomy 2, I'm talking about the Masoretic text. Deuteronomy 2, scholars have noticed a problem with this text. The problem is this. It's talking about the war with Sihon, right? So if you read the story in Deuteronomy 2, they go and God says to the children of Israel, go beat up Sihon. Well, I mean, there's no mention. This is what scholars have noticed. There's no mention of offer them peace, and if they accept the peace or whatever, he just says go wipe them out.
Yeah.
So scholars have said, hang on just a minute. And then later in Deuteronomy 2, it says Moses took God's directive to go wipe them out, and he goes, hey, let's go offer them peace, and let's see if they give us peace or whatever. Well, that clearly, scholars said, hang on a minute. We think, this is what scholars said, we think that Deuteronomy 2 was originally a text that the scribe didn't know about the rule in Deuteronomy 20. You follow me so far? Like that, they didn't know that you're supposed to offer peace, or God would have said, go offer them peace, and if they don't. So they say this text has been edited. So Edan Dershowitz notices this. This is to your question, believe it or not. Edan Dershowitz said when he first read the Moses scroll, the children of Israel go and attack Sihon. They don't offer peace. They don't do any of what Deuteronomy 20 says to do. And one of the main reasons is they don't have to. The author of this Moses scroll didn't know about the rule in Deuteronomy 20. That came later, so God doesn't have to say offer peace because there's no rule. That Deuteronomy 12 through Deuteronomy 26, it is not part of the scroll. So there are quite a few evidences like this that suggest to me and to Edan and others that the original text looks a whole lot more like this, and then later it was expanded into what we have today. So if we find it, there are a couple of things that are going to happen right away. I have probably typed the manuscript dozens of times, like in Hebrew. I've done it in Paleo. I've done it in modern Hebrew. I know the text pretty well, down to the line. This is fragment A. This is line 1, 2, 3. This is fragment B, so forth. So has he done. So have a few others. So the first thing we would do is we would verify that our transcriptions were correct. Remember, in the 19th century, they didn't have any sophisticated equipment to read it. They were taking a camel hair brush, dipping it in alcohol, rubbing it on the scroll, can't be good for it, and, using magnifying glasses and trying to read it the best they could. Meanwhile, every time they soaked it, this tarry substance would absorb in it. I bet now when I find these in a shoebox in somebody's attic, they're going to be black. I don't think you'll be able to read a single letter. But guess what? We now have technology that allows us to take a totally blackened scroll and take photographs that will make those letters pop. So the first
or even burned
yes,
scrolls.
We have the ability now, like the Herculaneum scrolls, to read scrolls that are burnt to a crisp and that you can't even open them. and they're using AI and so forth to read. So we've got the technology now. And what I'm hopeful is that we find these and we're able then to look at the text. So the first thing I would do is to validate the text. I have 3 19th century transcriptions. I know every letter that they identified. I want to look at those again. You get the text. Now you're working from the best possible text. And then we began to look at other things textually to determine, exactly what does it say and so forth. So that, now, what I think would happen, the fundamentalist, the apologist, doesn't care about this.
Okay.
They've got their Bible. They
Either
don't
way,
care.
they don't care about evidence. Yeah, you're right about
They
that.
don't care about that. Look, in fact, when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, some people were like, oh my God, what's this going to prove? Is it going to make people not believe in Jesus, or is Judaism going to crumble, or Christianity? And all those things you would think that might happen, it didn't happen.
They didn't happen immediately, but they are happening.
Well, that's true. We could say that that's part of it, but I don't know if it's directly tied. Could be. I've not studied if there's a correlation between a lack of confidence in religious hierarchy, be it Jewish or Christian, or if it's more of just a disinterest in our modern time. Is it more fun to watch Netflix or the Kevorkians?
It
Not the
depends on your
Kevorkians.
passion.
Yeah. Or is it, I said Kevorkians, that's not the right, whatever those popular people are, that have these shows. Is it more popular to watch them, or is it more popular to dig into the text of the Bible? And most people say, I'm going to watch something on TV. I just think it's a disinterest. I don't think people are interested in religion. But again, there are some things in the works now that I hope to be able to talk about soon, where this is going to reach a much bigger audience. And, so we'll see. Maybe that will change. I love to watch these specials on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and, because it makes me think, what's the earliest, if I could go back and go back and go back and go, give me that original text. And so I think that the majority of people, Clody, I think they wouldn't even be fazed. I know Christians and good people that in my family and good friends that they would say, like, they don't care that I tell them, I think this is the earliest text of Deuteronomy, and they go, hey, that's cool. What's for dinner?
Yeah.
I'm like, did you hear me? I just said the most important document in the history of humanity.
I get it.
And they're like, no, I'm be quiet. I'm watching the baseball game. So sad, but true. But we'll see. We find it.
I hope that won't happen. I hope that it will shake the ground.
I do too. I do too. All right, my friend. Anything else?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right, hang around. Todd and Angel back in the hot seat. What you thinking about?
Kind of adding on to what Clody was talking about and what some of the discussion we've had here in the chat was, if these things are found, how much influence would it have on the world and the religions and everything like that? I don't think a majority of the people have, I wouldn't say the know-how, but they don't have the drive to take something like that and make it work to their advantage.
Yeah.
Just like us, when we started questioning Paul years ago, it drew our faith even stronger. Mm-hmm. Then we started questioning, once we started studying the Torah and getting into classes with that and everything before we got with you, we started questioning things. And that just draws you closer, because it's like, I want the truth. And it, rather than saying, well, this didn't fill the word of God. I went, no, it ain't.
Yeah.
And I think it just draws you closer. And it's interesting that, personally, as far as I'm concerned, I think that the Beatitudes that Yeshua preached in Matthew 5 I think he was actually quoting the Moses scroll with the blessings and the curses.
Yeah.
I think that's where he got it from, because a lot of them parallels each other. And I don't know. I just think if something like this came out, I would say a majority of people would deny it because it's going to make them think.
Yeah.
And why should you think? Because 98% of all people who go to church, the only Bible they get is what's spewed at them from the pulpit on Sunday mornings. Other than that, they never touch it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and it's sad. A lot of people are in different place than I am in terms of what they find interesting or whatever. But and you guys are good friends of mine. I consider you good friends of mine. And one of the things that's fun about this whole thing is I don't have to agree theologically to find common ground with someone that, may not agree with me totally, but you and I, if we lived closer together, would probably be in trouble because we'd spend too much time together and wouldn't get anything done. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, I think that this case is important for those reasons, but I love having conversations with people who are, they might be Christian, they might be, fundamentalist Christian, they might be more of a Hebrew roots person. I have friends that are Orthodox Jews, I have friends that are Muslim, I have friends that are in different places theologically, and we can come together because we have some very common, similar ground. I have a lot more in common with people that I disagree with theologically than those people who don't even care about the Bible or religious studies. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
but
preaching to the choir.
On another note, we learned a valuable lesson yesterday. I wouldn't say we learned a lesson, but we had something shown to us when we were in court. We left it in the father's hands for the decision as far as whether we get guardianship of her mother or not.
Yeah.
And I told her on the ride back, I said, I think that was the father's way of keeping us separated.
Yeah.
Because, even when we had Sabbath, her mother still did her hobbies, the stuff that she likes to do. And then they would come on Saturdays and pick her up and take her out to eat, spend money on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And all this other stuff. And I think that it did bother us. It did kind of disturb our shalom on the Sabbath with that. And I think that was just his way of saying, I'm not going to put you through that no more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's kind of a valuable lesson to us. And also yesterday, she doesn't remember her saying it, but I heard her sister say it. She literally attacked us for our beliefs.
Yeah.
On the witness stand.
Yeah.
And just kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. Well, your mommy can't do that kind of stuff because of their religious beliefs.
Yeah.
I would think I was still probably shocked that she accuses, or that she said that she had mom tested for marijuana 3 months after she moved her out of her house.
Lord.
Just because we have a Cheech and Chong poster on the front door, I mean, come on.
Hey, there you go. That's certainly evidence. I don't know. It might not stand up in court, but.
And I'll sign out on this little note right here. JJ made a comment about the Kevorkians. This is a little too much for me to type, but JJ, when I had my wisdom teeth cut out, it was by a Dr. Kevorkian.
Oh, goodness. Look, I don't know
got
who I'm thinking about, but I know that they're the Kardashians. Yeah. That's what I meant. So y'all forgive me. I'm not much on anything newer than, say, I don't know, 622 BCE. I start getting a little sketchy once I get past there.
The best part about it was I did get a T-shirt that said, I survived Kevorkian's anesthesia.
That's cool. That's cool. I'd like that. Good stuff.
That was for JJ. So.
All right.
That's all I got, buddy.
All right, brother. Michael Douglas. Hey, brother. How you doing? Shabbat shalom.
Oh, wait a minute here.
I hear you. I see you.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good.
All right.
Well, it's been dark here. I'm as some of the people here know, I'm running on power tool batteries until they today. But I just like I'm so happy to be here. And especially when I heard what the subject of today was about.
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like this is, it's one of those things, just like the world is overwhelming, all that's happening in it, it's just like, how can you even begin to comprehend it? It's like I just feel like the stage is being set. For was it Clody that brought up the idea about shaking this world?
Right.
It really seems like to me, and I can say that because my world has been shaken. My little world has been shaken by just one thing. But I know that when people feel uncertainty and confusion, it's like that's the greatest call for them to start to look for clarity to come out of that. And timing is everything. I mean, I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, I get it. No, I get it.
I'm 77 years old this year, and in my early 20s is when I first had an experience that started me looking for how to have an experience of life, because I had a taste that was very strong. And so I started to look for that. And I looked at all kinds of scriptures. I walked into many churches and just like, I learned what I learned. But one of my first steps was actually health, because I was in very poor health all of my youth.
Yeah.
And so I came upon a natural hygiene, which some people might have heard of, and mucusless diet healing system, and various kinds of things that like pointed towards like a Garden of Eden kind of diet, know.
Yeah.
And that was a big clue to me, because it really did start to open things up. But through that, I came across a book called The Essene Gospel of Peace, which some people here, I'm sure, have seen that.
All right.
And when I read that, that's what started me. Okay, the Essenes, what about the Essenes? So I started to look. Well, what does the Old Testament have to say? What does the Bible, both Christian and Hebrew, have to say about?
Yeah. All right, Michael, you locked up. Michael is here, as we say, on a wing and a prayer. That's not me locked up, is it? Move, Todd or Angel. Let me see if I can. Okay, it's not me. Michael, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to David and bring you back if you come back. Okay, so don't be offended. I'm going to put the mute. And I'll leave your hand raised, and you can come back if you get it going. David, Shabbat Shalom. How are you, brother?
I'm really well, thank you, Ross. This has been enlightening. It's been fun. Now that I'm a member of, I became a member of your Patreon on the spot, and I've been going to Tabor's, and now I'm a member of yours. So
hey,
I don't know
you
where
very
I'm going
much.
to have time for my own work, but I'm a doctor. But anyways, this is really a eye-opening subject, and I will read your book, I promise. Just curious, what do you think are the implications for Christianity or our understanding of Jesus' words? In particular, I'm thinking about Matthew 5:17, where he talks about, do not think I've come to abolish
not
the Torah.
One jot or one tittle, right?
Right. So maybe, is it possible that if this is true about the Moses Scroll, that Jesus was actually referring back to what may have been sort of a different Deuteronomy, and it sounds like it may be a somewhat pared down, somewhat simpler, perhaps something a little more direct, something missing chapters 12 and 26, 12 through 26, as you had mentioned. Could you tell us some of your thoughts on what the implications are for Jesus?
Yeah. Yeah, first of all, excellent question, and welcome to the Fun House. I guess Tabor's is pretty fun too. I've known him for about 30 years now, so we work together on a lot. But I'll tell you, as far as from a Christian perspective, we do get this message that comes across in the gospel, that Gospels, I should say, where it's like, for instance, Matthew 19. And by the way, I'm a Hebrew Bible guy, but I have done quite a bit in the New Testament as well. But Matthew 19 has this idea that from the beginning it wasn't so. You know, remember the question about, well, if we get divorced and then this person, who are they going to be with in the world to come? He's like, well, you know, so there's this fun debate there. And didn't Moses say that we could have divorce, basically? And the answer is, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but it's in the beginning it wasn't so. So one of the thoughts is that in the beginning it wasn't so, that there are things which have been added, unwelcome added, almost like wheat, tares have been sown among the wheat, and those have grown up together, and we have both. And so one thing that I think about is, what are some of those things that were not part of the original? And did Jesus either know about them? And I know on this forum, I have people who are all over the place on their view of Jesus. To some, he was a great teacher. To some might think that he was a prophet and nothing more. Some might think that he's God incarnate. So given all of those options, one of the things that I see is that when you look at the teaching of Jesus, one thing that is striking, and this was actually sort of brought to my attention, I may have noticed it a little bit, but it didn't really hit me from the Jesus perspective until a good friend of mine, Cameron Waters, was at my office. We were having a conference last year, and the 10 words with the blessing and the curses were displayed on the wall. Some good friends of ours, gave this as a gift. And they noticed that the blessing, the first blessing, you have the commandment and then the blessing and the curse. The blessing was, blessed is the one who loves the Lord his God, right? And then, so I'm just going to open this up and kind of relive it fresh before you. The number one on my chart said, blessed is the man who loves Elohim, his Elohim, and worships him alone and serves him alone. And all the people, they will respond and say, amen. And the last is, blessed is the man who loves his neighbor. And all the people, they will respond and they will say, amen. Now, there's really not, you know, we have this, it occurs in Mark, which is presumed by most scholars to be the first gospel. It appears in Matthew. It appears, help me out, Todd and Angel, but it appears in several of the gospel texts, including the Gospel of Luke. So at least in the synoptics, I don't think it appears in John, but this idea that the law basically hinges on two things: love God and love your neighbor. Now, one thought that I had because of Cam's jolting observation that he pointed out to me was, I don't know this, but could someone in the first century be familiar with a text that sort of, you know, uses those bookends? Love God, love your neighbor, because it really doesn't exist outside of that. If you only had Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5, for instance, for the 10 Commandments, you wouldn't say that the law, especially if you're talking about the Decalogue, hinges on these two commandments. So that's one thing. But the other thing is what we think when we think of the historical Jesus, and we go through what scholars have identified as sort of an gospel, the beginning gospel, whether we're talking about Q or, you know, some foundational element behind our current gospels, it would be like we're talking about with the Pentateuch here, that would be a stripped down version too. So what we basically, I guess I'm hopefully not beating around the bush, but what I'm really saying is that whether we're looking at gospel narrative text or we're looking at the Pentateuch, I believe that both of those have evolved to the point where they've picked up baggage along the way. And perhaps the Jesus of Nazareth, the historical Jesus of Nazareth, may have known, either because he saw a text like this, or if someone has a very high Christology, because he is who fundamentalist Christians believe he is, right? You see, I'm being kind of open to both options. So, long story short, we do see the, I guess, the open possibilities for Jesus to be familiar with a version that is not as we see it in the Gospels. One more point on that. There are several texts where Jesus says things like, "Does it not say in your law?" Now, some scholars view this as a later development where Christianity is antagonistic to Judaism. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. What if this Jesus of Nazareth had an idea that there was a law that was from Moses, and then there was an expanded document that had come to be the religious text of the day? Did that help, or did that just muddy the water even more? Either way, I'm open for a second point, question, challenge. All right, David, I appreciate it. Hopefully that did help. And I'm open if other people have ideas on that as well. All right, Scott, I'm going to hit the unmute. How are you, brother?
I'm doing good. It's good to be here. I just wanted to kind of remark on that previous statement. To me, what excited me when I found your book and your videos is just how inclusive it was of everybody. I mean, like, all the differences between all the religions just kind of disappear. You either follow the 10 Commandments or you don't.
Yeah.
And they all purport to follow that. And so it kind of gets rid of all the differences that we've had through the years. That's, to me, that just is one of the most important things about this scroll. And then the fact that I believe in Jesus. And so it really seems to, I don't know how to describe why his ministry was the way it was, how he spent so much emphasis on the 10 Commandments, but none of the other laws seem to be important to him. And so, like, going to the Hebrew roots thing and stuff, I was trying to find that point where what rules did he really want us to follow, and that just kind of makes sense of all of that. And so that's one. It really removes some of the harshest things that people use as a to say against Christianity or Judaism, as how it justifies slavery in the Bible. Well, no, it doesn't. And then all the other priestly stuff. I mean, some of the harshest stuff against gays or women actually is removed. It's just, either you are cheating on your wife or you're not. I mean, it seems to remove the harshest judgments that people have about the Bible. It just makes it a lot more accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really differentiate between one group and the other. It's just either you follow the 10 Commandments or you don't.
Good points. Yeah, I think that 10 Commandments foundation, is very, very bedrock. And in a way, it sort of puts us on the same page, as like everyone's reading from the same page of the hymnal, so to speak. And I think most people, Jews, Christians, I have Muslim friends as well, I think that those foundational elements are really what serves as the bedrock, the foundation. And some of these other laws, we know that it's been a tension in the text forever. Like, for instance, the monarchy. People can go to a text like Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 14 and 20, and they can see this idea that the monarchy is therein described, but as I've shown quite often, that appears to be late coming into the text if we read the historical narratives, because when the people request a king, like it says in Deuteronomy 17, in 1 Samuel 8, they request a king, and it's like Samuel doesn't know anything about it. And he goes to God, and God doesn't seem to know anything about it. So evidently, there are laws which were not written in the time of Moses, as far as I'm concerned, and I think I've got evidence in the text to suggest that. So if we start finding, as we say, chinks in the armor, if we find things that were added to the text, the question is inevitably going to come up, what did it say in the beginning? So back to Jesus, from the beginning it was not so. I want to know what it was in the beginning. Did it include all these other laws, as you say? You know, did it involve, did it include sacrificial cult, the temple, the dietary, whatever? I mean, what's actually part of it? So I'm with you, man. Go back to the 10, and I often tell people, what would the world be like if one day there was no murder, or one day there was a man didn't take another person's woman? I mean, what would the world do? Think about that. It's so powerful. And I think I love whether people trace it to the historical Yeshua or Jesus or not. I love when he kind of puts us back on the basics of, you've done all these other things, but you've neglected the weightier matters of the Torah. And what are the weightier matters? And if you think about the idea of coveting, people say, well, the law couldn't get to the heart. I beg to differ. If you tell me, Ross, you can't take someone's woman, and I don't physically take them, I could say, yeah, I got that. But if Jesus is maybe just drawing from the 10 words when he says, you don't even think about it. You can't even, it's something that's internal, coveting. Don't even desire someone else's woman. Anyway, I'm with you, brother. Let's go back to the source.
Well, I'm with you too.
Hey, brother, I appreciate it. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you. Thanks for doing the study.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for being here with me. I'd be talking to myself if you didn't show up. All right, brother.
All right.
Michael, you're back, man. I am sorry we lost you, and I gave your treasured spot away to all these other people. Welcome back.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can. I can hear you and see you.
Yeah. So, I never know what's going to happen here when a battery's going to run out or what, but
yeah.
What you said, about the law, the law really doesn't cut to the heart, but the instruction of God does.
Yeah.
And it's just like to hear it in a pure, simple form that's just not polluted with all these ideas about what that have no impact at all except for to lead us away from that simple path to love. Like burnt offerings and sacrifices. Now, people who actually read the Bible carefully at all, they'll see plenty of evidence, without the things that you're bringing to light here, through the Moses scroll, about that subject, but it's confusing because people need to hear from a source that's reliable and trustworthy, and and so you have to go by feel with that kind of. So I'm so glad that my friend Jacob and Luz brought me here that day, and that I can come back again, and because this is so exciting. To me, it's on a scale of, and I'm not recommending that people just go and read the book of Revelation.
Yeah.
But when I don't know how much you heard of what I was saying before. When I first started to look into the Essenes and read the Bible, the New Testament and the Old Testament, looking for clues how to have an experience of life, And one of the things, the book of Revelation was a book I just went to at very, carefully, because it's like, you can see how crazy people can go with that.
Yeah.
But chapter 10 of the book of Revelation, about the angel with the tiny scroll, the messenger standing with one foot on the land and one foot on the sea.
Right.
That came to me at the time. I thought that's the Dead Sea Scrolls, because I had such a like a light bulb turned on not when I read the Dead Sea Scrolls, but when I understood what was being spoken, there. And so, to bring that to today, it's like, well, yeah, the Dead Sea Scrolls then, but this is the first Dead Sea Scroll. To get to the heart of the matter is for the instruction of God to be presented in a clear way, but in a way that shakes everything that's happening today in the world. It's like people are being shaken, and they're really like going crazy with looking to a solution that seems right.
Yeah.
But it just leads into more enmity, with our neighbors and with God even, because it doesn't produce the result of wholeness that we need to have.
Yeah.
And so it's just like it's beginning to happen, and I'm so grateful that you've done your homework on this. That I can come here and be part of this discussions going on, because it is so important that the timing is everything. When the uncertainty is so great and confusion is so great that there seems to be no hope at all, that God will make a light shine so that people can come out of that confusion, and only by entering into clarity. You can't get out of confusion without clarity.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, you can't get out. There's no escape except for to enter into clarity. And to me, that's what these teachings, the book that when this comes out, I feel this is going to be that more than the Dead Sea Scrolls. The first Dead Sea Scrolls is like the last will be first and the first will be last.
Right.
It's like it wasn't. The time wasn't right for it to be accepted. It had to shake the world, and then the world just jumped to a conclusion, which was a faulty conclusion, and put it away. And so then the Dead Sea Scrolls are discovered, and just your ability to see objectively and clearly enough to put all of this into perspective and present it in such a beautiful way that people who do have ears to hear will be able to hear it. This is just like a beginning, and I'm so grateful. I had so many. Just let me read this one thing, because
Okay.
in the conclusion of that scroll, Revelation 10, where it's like the messenger who he saw standing on the sea and on the land, raised his right hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created the heaven and what is in it, the earth and what is in it, and the sea and what is in it, that there would be no more delay, but in the days of the shofar call to be sounded by the seventh messenger, the mystery of Elohim would be fulfilled, just as he announced to his servants, the prophets. And then there's this beautiful thing says, go. Then the voice that I heard spoke to me again, saying, go and take the scroll that's open in the hand of the messenger who is standing on the sea and on the land. So I went to the messenger and told him to give me a little scroll. And he said to me, take it and eat it. It will make the stomach bitter, but in your mouth it will be as sweet as honey. And I took the little scroll from the hand of the messenger and ate it. It was sweet as honey in my mouth, but when I had eaten it, my stomach was made bitter. And I was told, you must again prophesy about many peoples and nations and languages and keys. And then this last thing, about the taste of honey from Psalm 119. There's just a few sections here that David says. This is not necessarily in order, but Psalm 119, David writes, "How sweet are your words to my taste,
Right.
sweeter than honey
Yeah.
to my mouth." Even though because through your precepts, through your teaching, through your instruction, I get understanding. Therefore, I hate every false way. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. And just a little bit before that, he says, if your Torah had not been my delight, I would have perished in my affliction. I will never forget your precepts, for by them you have given me life. I am yours, save me, for I have sought your precepts. And my understanding at this point is that that word save there, yasa, means to to come into a broad, expansive, wide place, means, a wide place of understanding and sight and vision and ability to walk. And then the last is Psalm 1997 to 99. Oh, how I love your Torah. It is my meditation all the day. Your direction makes me wiser than those who hate me, because it is always with me.
Yep.
I have more understanding than all of my teachers, because your testimonies are my meditation. And so that's kind of the main point I've just been wanting to bring out, hopefully to help people hear that's it. The instruction, the words are one thing. They're like signs pointing us, but to actually be able to read those signs and understand them, and to clearly put them into practice, is what brings us out of confusion. And it's so beautiful that we don't have to live in a world of ideas and theories and theologies and beliefs and opinions. We can actually have clarity and live in a life that's like, we don't have to jump to conclusions. They're always going to bring us to a conclusion. We can enter into something that just opens us up to the truth of life, and to be able to love our neighbor as ourselves, and to love our God with our whole heart, our whole mind, and all of our strength. That's the whole thing. And so I wish, ever since I was in my early 20s, I just long for a place. This is so beautiful that we can meet online, but I'm just like hopeful that someday that people can actually live together.
Oh, yeah.
In community where it's that culture that is set apart from this world, and all the focus on trying to make a living and survive. How am I going to pay the rent? What am I? All of that stuff can just be focused on. Okay, forget about all that. When you love your neighbors yourself, you don't have to look out for yourself anymore.
Yeah.
You can put all your attention into just lifting up your God and the sight of your neighbors, and that we can all just rise above all of this confusion.
Yep. Well, I tell you what,
you.
I'm glad that you persevered and got back through. That's a good message for the folks. I appreciate that, Michael.
Well, yeah, I do too. Like I'm at the whim of solar batteries, that being charged up, and an internet connection that that got torn out of my house. But I got it back again, but it needs batteries to run because there's no power.
Well, I appreciate you, and I do understand. It's I've had conversations with quite a few people about if we all. I started to break into an old Protestant song, when we all get to heaven, that kind of idea. But when you reach the place where people are dwelling together in unity, as the psalmist puts it, that is a wonderful thing. And it is interesting, though, that even despite efforts, several people would love to be in sort of a community type setting, but for whatever reason, things just haven't come to that place yet. And so we're almost in that place that Jeremiah describes, where it's, how do they say, two from a family, one from a city, where people are all over the place. And there's just this really, really depth of scattering. And yet, and yet we can still fulfill that idea of coming together every week. And this is the next best thing, I guess we would say.
Yeah, the next best thing. That sounds like an old commercial for a telephone,
Yeah.
but yeah, the next best thing to being there, or Kodak moments, all those things the world gives us that, take a snapshot in time. But yeah, like it's timing is everything, nobody can create that except for God.
Yeah.
When it's going to happen, it is going to happen. And just like again, for all people who believe in the message of God, Christians, Jews, Muslim, anyone who has ears to hear anything at all and a heart to understand, is that love that calls us together so that because it wants to be complete. It doesn't want to be talking to walls all day long.
Yeah.
And so that's why this is a blessing here, because there are people who are listening and who want to know. That's the whole key to it. And when the time is right, it's just like most people don't, most Christians, read the Bible, I guess, somewhat, and they believe in, so to speak. But in the book of Acts, in the early portion of Acts, there's a section that was drawn from a book that was called the Acts of the Hebrews, and it talks about the very early days before Paul came into the scene, and it was like there was community, and not only that, but it said everyone who believed
Yeah.
in the good news sold all of their possessions, and no one said, it wasn't like they just threw everything away, but nobody said this is mine and that's, but everybody shared everything in common, and there was it was like a family, really, or a marriage, a community covenant, beyond, what man and a wife. And I mean, that's supposed to be smooth, and it very often isn't. So blessings to all those people who are married and they have a key to keeping that together. But that it's love that keeps it together. And so real love for your neighbor is whoever is near you. And what better place for that to just blossom, but in the community where everyone is serving God and their neighbor, and just like losing their self in love. And so God help us to, hey, anybody that's listening to this, that's interested, let that be an open thing, that I really wish I could be where you all are.
Hey, but we're all in the same. It's funny because everyone who's here is representing a little square. It's like we're all from different places, but we have come together for the reasons that you say. And I want to think that we're all drawn together so that we can learn together and grow together and share together and find truth and be able to discuss and debate respectfully these different ideas. And look, I know that there probably are other places where this can take place. I pray that there are hundreds and hundreds and thousands of them. But if there's not, I'm glad that each person here has found this place, because it makes it, you make this work, each of you. So good stuff.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Hey, brother.
Like the Titanic, and with God's timing, that there's going to be lifeboats.
Oh yeah, I was about to say, I don't know, Michael. You better stop if you're comparing this thing to the Titanic. I don't know that I like that. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, good stuff,
Amen.
brother.
Amen.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, my friend.
Shabbat Shalom.
Have a beautiful week. All right.
Yes.
Todd and Angel, is the secret to your relationship like it is at my place, Todd, that Angel realizes how blessed she really is every day? She just wakes up with a smile on.
Yeah, but then again, so do I. So
yeah, I got you. I got you. Good. What's on your mind, brother?
That's what I was talking about yesterday. I just looked at her. I said, "We're truly alone."
Yeah. Hey,
this is hers. This is hers.
Yeah.
What Michael was sharing, it reminded me of when we first started this walk. We had left one Baptist church where they only talked about one scripture for the whole service, and we went to another church where they were reading through the book of Psalms in Sunday school, and I kept thinking how much David praised Yah's commandment.
Yeah.
And it was such a sharp contrast to what we have been taught in Christianity that, I mean, I really think that was the kicking point that led us to follow Yeshua out of Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, it's at least part of it. It's part of that equation when you recognize that, and I heard, Todd, I heard you say Paul, but it's also that too, but that too ties in because one seems to be antinomianism or against the law, whereas like Angel says, Jesus and or David and or someone else extolling the Torah, and you're like, wait a minute. So I think that when I talk and I get emails and messages and phone calls and whatever, people tell me their journey, it's personal to them, but there are a lot of crossover. There's a lot of similarities. Like if we just started doing testimony time and you each said, well, here's what happened to me. I was just reading along and this hit me and, whatever, you'd start noticing. If you started a dry erase board, you'd go Sabbath. The law is not really done away with. Dietary rules, festivals, Sabbath. You start going, oh, it's the same things. God has a name. It's not, So I think it's hard to step back and look at a movement, if we can call it a movement. It's hard to look at that and go, look, you may not believe in God the way I believe in God, but it's hard to deny that something's going on. Mm-hmm. That's what we see. We see a lot of that. And so where does it bring us? Well, interestingly enough, usually people will say, I feel like I'm all by myself. I thought I was going crazy. No one, people thought that, who are you? People have been going to church for thousands of years. Where you figured something out, Ross? And I know that people have heard that. And I mean, I've spent time thinking of it myself, thinking, what is going on? Am I the only one that sees this? And lo and behold, I meet hundreds of people like you. Not just like you, but you know what I mean.
Well, it's like we were just talking about too before you cut us on, was David sings the praises of the Torah and his laws and his commandments and light to his feet and everything else. In Galatians, Paul turns around and says, nope, it's bondage.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They know it's freedom.
And let me be bound.
It literally is freedom. I mean,
yeah.
Because this is very easy to do.
Right.
I mean, it really is. And that's what Yeshua said. My yoke is easy, my burden is light.
Right.
It's easy.
Mm-hmm.
You start reading portions of the Torah, like we've talked about, with all the sacrifices, and the priests must wear this, and they must have it just right, and they must do this, that, and the other, so many threads per count, or whatever, stuff are thrown out there. That's not easy, and that's not light.
Yeah.
So again, head scratching.
I know it.
Also, I don't ever feel that Yah would give us something to do that we can't do.
Right. Yep. That's a good point. And I've often heard that God will only give you what, and this is one of those things that may not be in the text, but you can find something close where God's going to either prepare you for what's coming or, something of that. In other words, you're not going to get thrown something that you can't make it through. Now, I don't know that that's true. And I certainly can't think of a verse right off the top of my head, but I can think that quite often things that come my way, something happens that does in some way prepare me for it. And so while I can't necessarily claim a text behind that, maybe some of you can, I at least feel prepared. And part of that preparation is we have to do the work. You got to dig in. This faith is not just handed to us. I think it's something that we work for. I think that it is something. And I know that people don't. There are other theologies that say otherwise, but we have to do something. What else, guys?
I just wanted to leave with this one last thing. I really appreciate this assembly because after court yesterday, I was kind of feeling a little down, and I got so many uplifting messages from many of you guys. I really appreciate it.
That is good. That is so good to hear, and I am so happy to know that, because that's, believe it or not, that we all have times where we go through some tough situations, and there's nothing better for me than for somebody to reach out and just say, "Hey, I got you back. I'm praying for you. I'm thinking about you." Look, life is tough. Life is tough, and there are some very hard situations that we do go through. Having said what I just said, that sometimes that piece of preparation, when we can't go on, or we can't maybe do it with a lot of strength on our own, somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about you and praying about you." And since you guys, I know others have said this too, we know you're going through some stuff, and so our prayers are with you. So just know that.
Or you're lucky when she gets like this, usually when she looks at me and says, "Shut up."
Well, that's okay. She can tell you that. She can tell me that too. I'm used to it. But I technically only have to take it from one woman that I know of. I guess a couple, but I'll take it from anybody who's in that mood. I'm pretty good at taking it.
That's right.
All right.
That's all we got, buddy.
Hey, have a beautiful Sabbath the rest of the day, and a good weekend.
You as well.
Elisheva, Sister Betty, how are you, my friend?
Yes, I'm I'm better, thanks. I've
Good.
been kind of under the weather, but I'm better. And I do appreciate very much Angel and Todd and everybody. But anyway, love you. And one of the things, if I can explain this, it's kind of hard, but I know we're all separated.
Yep.
And I, for one, have always had a group of people around me whether in a Christian setting or a synagogue, and now I don't.
Yeah.
And now it's just, my online community. But I've grown to understand that right now that's just where I believe I'm to be and where we all are to be.
Yeah.
Maybe not together yet, physically, but one day we will. And one of my go-to verses when I'm kind of feeling down and alone is from Ezekiel. And I'm sure you know what it is, Ross. You can probably quote it. It's Ezekiel 16. 11:16.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It talks about, that he scattered us into all these countries. We're all like alone, but he has been to us a little sanctuary.
Right.
And to me, that is so beautiful. I can't imagine it. And I know last night we were reading in the Shabbat opening class from Proverbs 14, and it's verse 11. And it talked about a house of the wicked will be destroyed, but an ohel, or a little tent, of the uprightness will flourish. And I'm thinking, maybe we're all these little tents. We're all scattered around, and people who live in tents are kind of nomadic, and they move around. But yet, wherever we go, our God is with us.
Yeah.
He's with us individually, and I feel very strongly that I can't even talk. He's very much very much in our midst today, this day. And I just, it's overwhelming. I just thank you all. Anyway, I've been going through a hard time too.
Yeah.
But I have friends who reach out and check on me, and I do feel like Hashem is the Most High is within me and directing my steps and giving me strength from day to day. I mean, I wake up every morning with gratitude, no matter what's going on. The first thing out of my mouth is thank you. And that's probably about all I can say.
That's good, though. No, it's encouraging, too, because I think what you've tapped into is the feeling many of us share. You know, no matter what's going on around us, no matter what element of our faith is being challenged or the situations in our life that get tough, what it really comes down to is having that inner knowing that there is a God that is orchestrating things above. And I saw Ronnie Fulcher posted something similar to that, not in those exact words, but the other day. And I thought, you know, that's what it really comes down to. And, you know, I mean, look, we've got, and as Angel pointed out, sometimes this little group, I see things just that, you know, like this person knows this other person and they know them because of this little fellowship online. And to me, that's remarkable. So
it is. And I think we're all, we are all indeed blessed to have, first of all, found the Most High, and been given, I believe it's a gift. We have to seek it, but we've been given the opportunity to build this sanctuary within our hearts where He can dwell and within our lives. So, and then we can share with one another and be encouraged. I was watching a little bit of the new thing on Amazon about King David, and it was mentioned last night. And I was struck by what David said as a little shepherd boy. You know, he's thinking about what God told Moses, and Moses told Joshua, you know, to be strong and be strong and be encouraged. And I think that is something we can all say to ourselves and say to one another. And so that's what I'm saying to all of you right now.
Very good.
If you're going through a hard time, be strong and be encouraged.
Excellent.
So
I'll take that, and I'm sure everyone else will.
And I say this every time, and I'm not going to go ad nauseum about it, Ross, but I remember you from way over 30 years ago. And I can honestly say you have not changed a bit as far as your inner self. You have just moved your tent.
Amen.
Different places, and as God has led you. So anyway, I appreciate you.
Hey,
appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Betty. I appreciate you as well.
You're welcome.
Blessings for a wonderful week ahead, and physically and every other thing that you're praying for.
Amen.
Okay.
Oh, and for those, just one more thing. For those who are into it, the Festival of Purim is this week, and it is certainly a whole lesson about being strong and being courage, having courage. If we read the book of Esther and how she saved her whole people, you know, whether it is whether it was added, whether it's a myth, whatever, it's a beautiful story.
Hey, I love the story.
I do too. And it's a time to be joyous. So.
Yep. And
anyway.
I think, I saw Dave Tyler, and now I don't know if he's here, if he's not, but Purim or his birthday on the Hebrew calendar, at least, is Purim. So you guys can reach out and tell Dave happy birthday on Purim.
Oh,
you get a
how
kick
about
out
that?
of that.
Yes. Okay.
Good stuff.
Everybody have a good week. Shavua Tov. Shabbat Shalom.
All right. I am going to take one more question as far as I know, and that is from my good friend Miriam. She says, question, Ross. In Shapira's quest journey, was he a loner or was his family with him on this journey in presenting his evidence and discovery? That is an excellent question, and it's funny for me because I've joked with some of my friends that I think Shapira's wife, Rosette, was just like Bridget. And what do I mean by that? First of all, I could not do what I do if I was married to anyone else. I can guarantee you that. When I met Bridget, we were in 10th grade, and I assure you that the cards in front of Bridget did not say Bible teacher. She didn't have me pegged as a Bible teacher at that time, I guarantee. I know she didn't. I'm telling you, she did not think that. But she has been right by my side the whole time, and she's not this, I'll just say it this way, she's not so much a needy person. Like, in fact, I don't know that she needs me at all for anything. She does everything on her. I mean, I could not have picked anybody who would put up with me because a lot of people might think they'd like to be close to me, but I promise you I'm hard to get close to. So I'll just tell you this. Whenever I read the story, one of the parts of the story that's fascinating, and this is to Miriam's question, is the report from Miriam, Harry, is the it's the story from Shapira's daughter. It's called The Little Daughter of Jerusalem. And I read the English version of that. And Miriam Harry is the pen name that his daughter actually uses. But she was very close, and she tells what life was like in the Shapira home. And so you've got this guy, Shapira, who would come home and he'd go, honey, check this out. I found the oldest scroll, this, and he's holding it up and he's like, this thing, if this is real, Rosette, this is going to change everything. And she's like, sit down, honey, it's time to eat. He's like, but you listen to me. You have I'm telling you, do you understand that this is written in Paleo Hebrew and there are interpuncts here and no one's ever seen this? And she's like, do you want, how much she's just taking care of this guy who's a nut job. And so that's kind of the life that Bridget has. I'm all over the place. You're not gonna believe this, Bridget. Did you know the Dead Sea Scrolls? And she's like, yeah, that's great. Okay, here, sit down. So I think it's funny because when Shapira died, I really could imagine, God forbid, I don't want to die. I want to live to be 120. But when Shapira died, his wife was trying to figure out picking up the pieces. And one of the things that she did, she probably never really paid close attention to him when he was telling all of his stories about the scroll and all. But she remembered one name. I know this because I've read everything I can find. She remembered that he had one guy named Professor Schlotman that stood by him when everybody else didn't. And she found 2 pieces of that scroll in her husband's things, and she sent them to Schlotman. She didn't know, because she didn't listen to her husband all the time, that they had fallen out by that point. So the reason I'm telling you this is I could almost imagine, thank God Seth is here with me every day, but if it was left to Bridget, she would send my greatest research to somebody who's not even my partner anymore, because she just hadn't kept up. But having said that, she really, everything we can tell, she really loved Moses and she supported him, but she just didn't jump in the forefront. This weekend, Bridget is going to be here painting and building bathrooms at the building we're having our conference, and and she's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. So there you go. So your question, the answer to that is, I don't know. It's funny. One more thing about Bridget. One of our anniversaries, I don't know, maybe close to 35 years or something. We were in a group of people, and I said, man, it's 35 years. Today's our anniversary. And they said, wow, that's great. How'd you do it? And I went in and talked about all the good stuff. And they looked at Bridget, and she said, yeah, 35 years. She said, I could have been out for armed robbery by now. That was her answer. So I still think she likes me, but she, just not that, she doesn't give me a whole bunch of strokes on the head and make me feel better. All right. Hopefully that answers. All right. What else can we talk about? Is there anything else? Betty, is your hand still up? Let me unmute you. Did you have your hand?
No.
Okay.
No,
right.
it's up, but I need to take it down.
All
or
right.
you can do it for me.
All right, I got it.
Thanks.
Look, it has been a long day, and you, my friends, have been with me a very long time, and I truly appreciate it. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your support. If you're still with us on the YouTube, some of you may not have the link. Now, we did change the link this morning. I changed it to put it on my channel, thinking that would help. And I inadvertently, a few people didn't get the link. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. If you are part of our Yachad, part of our support, and we value that, we really appreciate it, and you feel like, I don't know how to get in that Zoom call, and I want to get in the Zoom call, send me an email, rossknichols@me.com, and I'll make sure to send you that link because I want you in here too. But please do that. I don't want anybody to feel like they got locked out or whatever. Thank you for joining me. Help us share this message. It was a long one, and a lot of people don't like listening to 2-hour talks, but if they're interested in the Shapira scroll, or you're interested in it, maybe you would do me a favor and just share it with a friend or someone. Just let them know, here's an interesting story. Otherwise, can we just say Shabbat Shalom and we'll see you next week? Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov. Thanks, everybody, for joining me, and we'll see you next week.